Darkness didn't just fill the underground vault, it devoured sound, warmth, and even memory. The Resistance landing team had expected a forgotten weapons cache, or maybe a Dominion surveillance station buried under the dust of this dead moon. What they found instead was a sealed corridor lined with scorched steel walls, flickering lights that hadn't worked in centuries, and a single cryolock chamber buried deeper than any of their maps had shown. The team's scanners screamed with interference as they got closer, making their helmets hiss and snap with static. Something ancient was humming beyond the final bulkhead, something not Dominion, not Resistance, not even fully human. And when the blast doors finally groaned open, they saw her, suspended in blue ice, pale skin glowing faintly under the flickering lights. A girl no older than 20, bound in black metal restraints that didn't match any known tech. Wrists were chained, her mouth covered by a thin silver veil, and her eyes closed still gave the impression of watching, of waiting. She had no ID tag. It's no name in any registry. Just a series of symbols branded along her collarbone, glowing faintly in a language even the ship's AI couldn't translate. One of the engineers whispered, "What kind of prison needs to chain someone inside cryo?" No one answered, Captain. Dareth of the Resistance stepped forward, cautiously, reading the chamber's control panel with growing unease. The power supply was self-sustaining, independent, not connected to the base. This cell had been built long after the facility around it had died. Like someone wanted to keep her in while the rest of the galaxy forgot. But for how long? The stasis timer showed no end date, just a single status: indefinite containment. Voice locked. Tier 0. Dareth leaned closer. Voice locked 2. Who? The answer came before anyone could guess. A deep, ancient sound vibrated through the floor like metal groaning, waking from a long, painful sleep. Lights across the old corridors surged. The Resistance ship parked on the surface suddenly lost gravity for 3 seconds, causing the crew to panic as their systems rebooted without warning. Down in the vault, the girl's chamber hissed. The cryo steam began to drain, slowly. One of the techs backed away, eyes wide. "We didn't do that." "I know," Dareth muttered. He raised his weapon, not to shoot, just to be ready. The metal mask across the girl's mouth dissolved like ash. Her restraints hissed, then clicked. Open, but she didn't move. Her eyes remained closed. Her breathing steady, and then it happened. The ship above, the Horizon's Flayman old battle cruiser barely held together by field repairs, suddenly came online. Not just the basic systems.
All of it!
Shield grids, core reactors, deep data modules the crew had never even accessed. Alarms rang, lights blazed. The main AI voice, long silent since the central core was damaged, suddenly spoke in a tone no one had heard before. Command voice detected. Identity confirmed. The bridge crew froze. Who? The pilot asked. Whose voice did it recognize? The ship answered coldly. Avalon. The name echoed through the coms. Dareth heard it down in the vault and turned toward the girl, heart pounding. She didn't even speak, he whispered. But the lights above the cryo chamber turned golden. The floor around the pod began to shift. The walls opened like petals, revealing a lift platform beneath her body. The girl's eyes snapped open, not glowing, not artificial, just clear, unblinking, and aware. She stood effortlessly, as if the years hadn't touched her. The chamber lifted her to the floor level, and without saying a word, she began walking. The Resistance team didn't know what to do. No one could move. She passed them all in silence, calm. Her bare feet didn't make a sound. She walked through the blast door as it opened for her, past the scorched halls, straight toward the hangar. Dareth followed at a distance, his weapon lowered, sweat running down his face. Wasn't afraid she would attack. He was afraid he already knew who she was. When they reached the ship, the landing ramp opened without any command. The ship's AI voice spoke again, this time in a reverent whisper. She has returned. She stepped aboard, and finally, as she entered the command deck looking at a ship she had no reason to recognize, yet walked like she had once ruled it. She spoke for the first time, a single word, quiet, soft, terrifying, awaken. I and the ship obeyed, not just with lights, not just with systems. The horizon's flame came alive, groaning, roaring, rising off the moon's surface with fire in its engines. Every forgotten weapon array, every hidden core reactor, every ancient subsystem flared with light, and far across the galaxy, Dominion scouts picked up a signal long thought lost, a voice they had erased from history, a name that should not have. Survived event. The girl they had locked in silence was back, and the warship remembered, above the cold, broken moon. The horizon's flame rose into the stars, not like a stolen vessel limping into orbit, like a long-buried beast stretching. For the first time in centuries, its hull groaned, not from damage, but from memory. Fire flowed through its engines. Power surged through its veins. And deep inside its core, beneath layers of forgotten coda, voice whispered back to the one that had woken it, "I remember you." Inside the ship, the Resistance crew moved. Like ghosts, no one dared speak above a whisper. The lights had changed soft gold, deep violet, pulsing like the ship was breathing. The AI systems no longer waited for orders. They responded only to her. The girl Evelyn, the one who had been found in silence, and now walked the halls as if they were built for her. And perhaps they were. Captain Dareth stood on the main deck, watching her from across the room. She hadn't asked for command. She hadn't issued any threats. She barely spoke. And yet every panel bent to her presence. Every sealed door hissed open as she passed. Every broken system hummed to life at the sound of her breath. She was no longer just the mystery from Cell Zero. She was something older, something the galaxy had tried to bury. Dareth approached slowly, speaking carefully. "Do you know this ship?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the command throne in the center of the bridge. A place no Resistance pilot had ever dared sit, mostly because it hadn't worked since they salvaged the ship 3 years ago. But now, it opened. Smoothly, silently, like it had been waiting for her. She sat. The lights across the command deck flared brighter. The ship's AI spoke again, no longer with static or aerotones, but with a voice filled with recognition. Primary. Control established. Command Evelyn. Status. Active. Dareth stepped back. The rest of the crew looked at each other, unsure if they were still part of this ship, or simply passengers now. "Where are we going, Aunt?" he asked. Evelyn raised her eyes toward the star. Map now projecting above the deck. Dozens of systems flared into views, some known, others lost to time. Her hand moved slowly, hovering over them, until it stopped on a single unmarked point. "I need to remember," she said softly. Dareth blinked. "Remember what?" But she didn't answer. The ship made the decision for her. Coordinates locked. Destination: Sector 12. Nova classified. Dead zone. The helmsman panicked. Systems off-limits, dead space. No nav routes. No gravity beacons. No fuel stations. "If we go dark out there," silence, the ship said. Not loudly, not cruelly, but with authority. Crew obeyed. The engines roared. The stars bent, and horizons flame jumped. What followed wasn't normal hyperspace. They didn't enter the usual blue swirl of stars. Instead, the ship folded through something darker, older, a hidden path outside of the standard lanes where gravity didn't behave, and time refused to tick properly. This wasn't navigation. It was memory, and Evelyn was guiding it. She didn't speak during the jump. Her eyes closed. Her fingers rested on the command console like a pianist remembering a song. And as she sat, the ship played back. Fragments. Videos or logs, but feelings. Screams. Fire. The sound of worlds falling. A broken lullaby in a language Dareth didn't understand. Some of the younger crew started to cry. Not from fear, from the weight. The past was bleeding through. When they emerged, it was not into open space. The dead system greeted them with a graveyard of ships' mangled wrecks orbiting a shattered planet. No signal, no movement. just ruins. But Avalon stood from the throne and whispered, "This is where I died." The words sent ice into Dareth's spine. "What?" She walked forward, slowly, hands trembling. "They called it the culling. Dominion forces used an AI virus to trap the minds of every firstborn in this sector, burned our fleets, turned our own ships against us." She looked at the bones of a once great Titan vessel drifting nearby, its core torn out. I was supposed to stop them, but someone betrayed me. Dareth whispered, "How long ago was this?" She turned toward him, tears in her eyes. "Thousands of years. I think I was the last one left." "But that's not possible. You're human." "No," she said quietly. "Not just human. I was created, designed from firstborn blood. A voice that could command titans. I was born to end the war." She clenched her fists, "But they were afraid of me. Even the ones I protected. So they locked me away. They made me forget." The ship whispered again, almost like a prayer. The war voice has returned. In the distance, an automated Dominion relay station flared to life. Red lights blinked. Across the wreck field, signal went out. They'd been found. The Dominion would be coming, and this time, they knew who she was. But so did the ship. And this time, it would not sleep. The Dominion's listening station hadn't broadcast anything in over 2 centuries. It was supposed to be dead, just a hollow surveillance node orbiting a ghost planet. But now its crimson lights pulsed in warning, sending a message across. Hidden military channels, unregistered Titan-class vessel detected, ancient maker signal code active, possible war voice anomaly. The Dominion's fleet command didn't question the report. They'd spent centuries hunting ghosts, digging up and erasing every trace of the firstborn. Dismantling relics, silencing anyone who remembered the old names. But this signal, this was different. It was alive, and it came with a name, a veil. The Resistance crew aboard the Horizon's Flame had no idea just how much danger that name carried, but Avalon did. She sat motionless in the command chair, her eyes locked on the glowing map of the ruined sector. Wrecks floated silently outside. Old ships frozen in their death spirals. But somewhere in that sea of wreckage, something called to her something older than war. It's older than fear. She stood. Without a word, the bridge lights shifted. A new path opened on the star map, a narrow tunnel of folded space, invisible. To scanners, it wasn't charted on any modern system. Only Avalon's presence had unlocked it. Dareth stepped up beside her, watching her with guarded awe. "What is that?" Her voice was soft, almost distant. "A whisper corridor. Only the Titans knew how to move through it. But why would it be hidden here, in a dead system?" She looked at him, her face unreadable. "Because the Dominion tried to erase what I locked away." Without further explanation, she nodded at the ship's AI. "Initiate silent code entry." The lights across the ship dimmed, power rerouted, gravity shimmered. And in a moment that felt like holding their breath in a collapsing cave, the Horizon's flames slid into the corridor. The stars vanished. What replaced them wasn't space, it was memory. Inside the whisper corridor, the ship moved without sound, no engine trails, no pulse signatures. Outside the windows, the world twisted colors that shouldn't exist, shapes that felt like thoughts. The Resistance crew stared in quiet awe, as if they were inside someone else's dream or nightmare. Then the visions began. Across the hull, flickering images formed like holographic ghosts walking just outside reality. Giant Titan warships, locked in battle. Avalon, standing at the heart of them, her face fierce, her eyes blazing, her voice commanding the stars. Whole fleets bowed to her, then fire, collapse, screaming. Her own allies turning against her. Dareth stumbled back. "What is this?" The custodian, silent until now, finally spoke from the shadows. "Echoes. The corridor stores them. Recordings not of sound or video, but emotion, intent, betrayal." The whispering increased. 1,000 voices. 1,000 deaths. Avalon's voice cut through it. "This was my final command route. my last safe place. I hid something here before they erased me. The ship arrived at its destination, a hidden chamber buried inside the corridor's code. No planet, no structure, just floating vault. Of light, prepare for extraction, she ordered. Dareth looked at her. You still haven't told us what are we pulling out? She turned to him, expression calm but steel hard. The map to the others. Others. She nodded. Titans. It's like this one. They're asleep. Hiding, scattered across the galaxy. But they're still connected. Still waiting for the right voice. As she stepped into the chamber, the ship extended a link pure light reaching out, touching her palm. Her eyes went white as the data surged. The custodian leaned forward. She's sinking. Old protocols reactivating. Suddenly, the bridge shuddered. The walls pulsed, and a blast of static filled the air. Loud, angry, violent, intrusion detected. Red lights flared. Dominion had traced them. A signal had broken into the corridor. Something the Order never should have known how to access. Avalyn's face twisted in pain as the link was violently severed. The map didn't complete. Dareth caught her as she fell back. Are you okay? She opened her eyes, blinking hard. They've learned more than I thought. A new voice crackled through the speakers deep, filtered, filled with contempt. You should have stayed forgotten. Dominion overseer. Live, watching them. But Avalyn's gaze turned sharp. She stood again, steady now, stronger. I was forgotten, she said, but the ship remembered. She turned toward the helm. Prepare weapons. When we exit the corridor, I want every cannon ready. The custodian tilted his head. And if the Dominion brings Judicator-class destroyers? She didn't hesitate. Then we show them that a forgotten voice can still command fire. The ship's systems locked in, weapons hummed to full power, and from within the whisper corridor, the Horizon's flame began its return. Not as prey, but as a message the galaxy could no longer ignore. The Horizon's flame burst out of the whisper corridor like a blade through glass, its hull glowing from the stress of passing through a path not meant for mortal ships anymore. Space returned, but not peace. Dominion destroyers were already waiting. 3 warships. 2 drones. 1 carrier, its underside bristling with fresh weapons, and a hangar full of soldiers. They hadn't come to talk. They'd come to erase. Inside the Titan, lights turned blood red. Power surged through the floors. The ancient ship remembered the drills, the signals, the formation of enemy vessels. And before anyone could speak, it was already calculating trajectories. The Resistance crew scrambled to battle stations, though most barely understood the systems now flashing alive around them, but Avalyn stood still. She walked to the center of the command deck, face blank, breath calm. The ship's interface bloomed. Before her globe of shifting code and energy, Old Maker language scrolled across it. Her hand moved through it instinctively, like brushing wind. Do not fire, she said softly. Captain Dareth stared at her. Are you serious? They're charging plasma cannons? Avalyn's eyes flicked to him. Not yet. The Dominion ships broadcast a final message. This is Overseer Talvek of the Solari Dominion. Stand down and surrender the girl, or face. Terminal cleansing, the ship translated it, word for word. Avalyn didn't reply. Instead, she turned to the ship's AI. Prepare the war signal. The custodian, standing near the starboard interface, stiffened. The war signal has not been used since the collapse. She stared forward. They think I am alone. Let them hear the truth. Dareth stepped forward, unsure. What is this signal? The custodian answered. A broadcast meant only for sleeping Titans, buried ships, hidden fleets. It wakes them. Dareth blinked. And how many of those are still out there? Avalyn looked him in the eyes. We're about to find out. She reached toward the globe of light. Her fingers touched a single point. The ship trembled deep and low like a growl. Then a pulse erupted from the Horizon's flame, silent to ears but deafening to ancient machines. It spread faster than light across encrypted maker frequencies, bouncing from one dead relay to the next, sliding beneath Dominion firewalls like a whisper through locked doors. Avalyn's voice carried within it not in words, but in code older than the Empire itself, a voice that once made entire fleets halt mid-war. The voice the Dominion thought they had erased. Across distant worlds, something stirred. On a distant ice planet, half buried in snow, a black monolith flashed red once, then twice. Then it began to hum, on a derelict station orbiting a neutron star. 3 drones flickered to life and aligned into a perfect triangle, waiting for instruction. On a forgotten moon covered in ash, a single Titan, ship massive, broken lit, one eye-shaped. Sensor. A name blinked on its dead screen. Command voice confirmed. Avalyn. Back at the battlefront, the Dominion ships launched their first strike. Plasma torpedoes screamed toward the horizon's flame. The ship didn't move, but its shield snapped. Up so violently, torpedoes disintegrated midair with a sound like cracking bone. Now Avalyn whispered just one word, now. The ship responded like a living creature, given permission to attack. Turrets unfolded from hidden compartments. Long sleeping missile bays surged open. And from the core of the ship, a weapon fired that didn't shoot light or fire but silence. The Dominion carrier's engines shut down, instantly not damage disabled. The Resistance crew gasped. Dareth staggered to the window. The Dominion carrier was drifting its power core cold, its lights fading. What did we just fire? He asked. Avalyn answered without looking. Signal built to override the AI in their ships. They copied our tech, but not the soul behind it. Oh, they're vulnerable. The other Dominion ships tried to flee, but they were too slow. The horizon's flame wasn't just faster. It was reading their minds, predicting their movements, calculating escape vectors before they even finished them. One by one, they were disabled. Not destroyed, not killed, but silenced. And then, ping. The ship's AI flared to life. Titan-class signal detected. Location, outer edge of Sectivorn. Ship designation, Black Echo. Status, waking. Titan class, signal detected. Ocean world. Ship designation, Seraph's anchor. Command voice required. Another, and another, and another. They were waking up. Dareth turned, eyes wide. You called to them. You really did it. Avalyn closed her eyes for a moment. The voices were coming back, not in words but presence. She felt them like warm fire after a long, cold night. The Dominion silenced me once, she whispered. But they can't silence 1,000 Titans rising from the dark. The custodian stepped forward. His voice was no longer machine flat. It carried awe. The war signal has returned. The fleet remembers. The galaxy is listening. What in the distance? More signals lit up beacons in the dark. The voice that once made the stars kneel, spoken again. And now everything was waking up. Space shimmered with quiet power. Across the galaxy, long silent Titans stirred from the depths of forgotten oceans, beneath scorched deserts. Within shattered moons, and behind cloaked asteroids, each one responding to a single sound carried. In an ancient language, her voice Avalyn stood at the center of the command deck, her hand resting lightly on the glowing core of the horizon's flame. Her eyes were closed, but her mind was wide open. She felt them distant pulses, echoes of old war machines stirring from their graves. She didn't control them. She didn't have to. They knew her. They recognized her. The voice they were programmed to follow had returned. Captain Dareth watched. From a respectful distance, Resistance crew had stopped asking questions. They didn't know what kind of power Avalyn truly held. Only that when she whispered, starships answered. And that frightened them more than any Dominion fleet ever. Had what happens now? He asked carefully. Avalyn opened her eyes. Now we gather them, before the Dominion does. Dareth glanced at the incoming signal feed. 9 Titan-class ships. More were pinging every hour. If the Dominion caught even one before it fully awakened, they'd try to rip it apart, scavenge it, or worse, recode it to serve them. He stepped closer. How many are out there? Avalyn didn't answer right away. She stared at the star map as it zoomed out, showing sectors beyond Dominion control, low dead zones, war-blasted systems, uncharted space. Her voice came out like a slow breath. 57. Maybe more. Not all will answer. Some are too far gone. Some may have fallen into the wrong hands. Then how do we reach them? Dareth asked, her eyes locked with his. With the voice? With what I am? For a moment he forgot the danger. The Dominion fleet could arrive at any hour, but in Avalon's presence, there was a calm gravity, like the eye of a hurricane. She wasn't just a woman from a cryocell anymore. She was becoming something else, the central command of a force the galaxy had erased from its memory. Custodian stepped from the shadows. Incoming Dominion traffic. Fast-class skimmers. Scanning range. 5 light minutes. Too close, Dareth muttered. They'll find us in seconds. But Avalon didn't panic. They're not here. For us! She reached into the ship's interface and shifted their position on the map. They're heading toward another Titan. One we haven't reached yet. She tapped the location. Sector Delta 9. Planet Kairos. The Titan's name flickered on the screen. Starweaver. Status. Dormant. Defensive systems offline. We can't let them take it, she said. If the Dominion breaches even one Titan, I'll try to copy the voice. Her expression turned cold, or make one of their own. Dareth didn't. Like the sound of that, the custodian confirmed her fear. They've tried before. Artificial war voices. Failures. But the last prototypes were close. If they catch a true Titan, they may succeed. Avalon didn't wait. Set course for Kairos Minor. Full speed. Cloaked approach. The ship jumped into hyperspace. Stars blurring past. Inside the tension grew. Resistance crew was beginning to understand this was no longer just a rebellion. It was a race for control of something older than any flag. Any empire, the last living weapons of the First Age. Kairos Minor spun below them, once a green world, and now half frozen by orbital failure. And nestled deep within its crust was the sleeping form of the Starweaver. Partially buried in ice, still untouched by war, but Dominion ships were already in orbit. 5 black vessels hovered in a circle above the ice. Drilling beams aimed downward. They were trying to cut through the crust. Avalon stared through the viewport, her jaw clenched. They're going to breach the outer hull. Once they access the core, they'll inject override code. Dareth looked at her. Can you stop them? She stepped forward. If I reach the Titan before they finish the breach, yes, I'll have to go alone. No way, he said. It's a Dominion kill zone down there. She turned to him, and her voice was steady. This is what I was made for. Before he could argue, the custodian added, She speaks the command tongue. Only her voice can wake the Titan. Anyone else will be erased by its defense systems. Dareth cursed. Under his breath, then we're running escort. He turned to the crew. Prepare stealth drop. Deploy decoy flares. And get her down there alive. Avalon descended alone in a drop pod, her silhouette framed by burning ice and falling Dominion debris. Enemy scans swept overhead, searching, but the ship's cloaking tech held. She landed hard, stepping into a field of white silence broken. Only by the sound of Dominion drills below her, the Starweaver waited. She placed her hand on the ice, closed her eyes, and then she sang. Not a song with words, not music, but a vibration, the command tone. It's perfectly pitched, ancient, forgotten. The ground shook, ice cracked. A distant groan echoed from beneath and far below. Something opened its eyes. The Starweaver was waking. Dominion. Crews screamed over, their comes as their systems began to crash. Lights flickered. Engines stalled. Every override code failed. Avalon spoke a final word into the snow. Rise. From the heart of the world, a Titan rose. The Dominion ships fled. Too late. The Starweaver lifted its head and broadcast a single, universe-shaking signal. War voice confirmed. Now, there were 2, and across the stars, others were listening. The Starweaver towered above the frozen plains of Kairos Minor, rising like a living monument from beneath centuries of buried silence. Its hull still glistened with frost, its joints groaning from disuse, but the power it radiated was unmistakable. A Titan-class warship fully awakened, fully aware, fully loyal to a single voice. Avend. She stood at the base of the massive structure, the icy wind swirling around her cloak, hair blowing wildly as the great machine bent toward her. In recognition, the ship didn't use words. It didn't need to. It lowered its entrance ramp like a knight kneeling before a queen long thought dead. Dareth and the Resistance team watched from their dropship above, hovering just outside Dominion scanner range. Their jaws were tight. No one spoke. Because what they were seeing didn't belong to this age. It belonged to the First Wars, the vanished era. The stories grandfathers told to scare children, stories they now understood were never stories at all. "She's not one of us," Dareth said quietly. The custodian stood beside him, arms folded like a sentinel. "No, she was never meant to be." Inside the Starweaver, systems came online one by one, slow, careful, as if remembering how to breathe. Lights flickered through the corridors, but there was no decay. The ship had been preserved, waiting buried deep beneath the Dominions. Maps. A secret too powerful to destroy, and too dangerous to use. Avalyn walked its halls like she'd never left, and the ship greeted her with every door opening in silence. Every console recognizing her printless touch. Old AI fragments whispered to her in half-broken tones, their language flickering between codes long forgotten. Yet she understood. God. She always had. She made her way to the bridge. There in the center stood a chair, not a throne of royalty, but of command. A platform built for the war voice. It was not meant to comfort. It was meant to anchor. A place where one voice could resonate across a fleet. She stepped into it, and the ship again bowed. Above in orbit, the Dominion regrouped. Her fleet had lost the battle at the last Titan. Now, with two under the war voice's control, panic rippled through the ranks. The overseers no longer saw a rogue anomaly. They saw the return of a system they thought deleted. A Titan network. Dozens of command channels, once dormant, now stirred. Surveillance AI choked under data it didn't know how to process. Old maker. Code crawled through Dominion databases like infection. Even their top brass began whispering in private. If she brings back the full fleet, we can't win. But fear didn't stop them. They launched a fleet of Interceptor's 20 ships. Armed with disruption mines and suppression, AIs. Each one programmed for one thing only. Kill the war voice before she could speak again. On Kairos. Minor Avalyn already saw them coming. The Starweaver sensors were far older and far more advanced than any Dominion system. She could see their thoughts before they fired. Their pattern was predictable. She didn't wait for Dareth's order. She sent a pulse through the war. Signal again. Not a full broadcast, just a call, short and sharp. A beacon, the horizon's flame answered instantly, arriving through a folded, slip-space tunnel and flanking the Starweaver just as the first Dominion. Fighters came into range, but they weren't alone. Another signal responded. Titan class detected. Designation, Cindertide. Location, Planet Ash 9. Awakening. Another. Designation, Iron Hollow. Another designation, Grave Light. All across the fringe systems. The Titans were rising. Dareth stood aboard the flame, watching the signals light up faster. And faster. She's not just calling them. She's building a fleet. The custodian nodded once. The throne is returning. The one lost to betrayal. The one they chained. Back on Kairos Minor. The Dominion fleet fired, but the Starweaver was already airborne. Avalyn stood at the command node, arms extended, voice steady. She didn't need targeting data. The ship was her. When she whispered, weapons obeyed. Mark them. Across the skies. Anti-ship plasma burst from hidden compartments. Beams of light pierced Dominion vessels in perfect synchrony. Not one shot missed. Not 1 second wasted. The Starweaver wasn't defending. It was teaching the Dominion what fear truly meant. Later, when the skies were clear and the wreckage floated quietly above the planet, Avalyn broadcast a message not just to Titans, but to the galaxy. She appeared as a glowing figure of light, her voice sent on frequencies older than memory. I am Avalyn, the voice you silenced, the name you buried. I have returned not to destroy but to remind you. First Fleet still watches. The throne has not been forgotten. And if you come for me again, she paused, then let the war-torn battlefield answer the rest. You will learn what it means to chain the stars. The custodian later stood at her side. What now? She stared toward the heavens where dozens of titans were rising, lighting up the dark with beacons once extinguished. Now we find the last piece, she said. The one they fear most. Dareth's voice crackled over the cum. You mean another titan? She shook her head. No, she said softly. I mean the throne keeper. The one who remembers why the titans were made in the first place. And far away, in a sector erased from all maps, a final signal pulsed. Weak, but not gone. The galaxy was about to remember everything. The message had been clear, sharp, carried like thunder across ancient frequencies. A line had returned, and with her, the titans had begun to rise. Across the galaxy, resistance outposts and hidden watchers reported the same thing. Signals long thought dead blinking to life. Coded pulses in Maker Tongue and Dominion surveillance systems burning out under an overload of old war protocols. But Avalon knew that what came next wasn't just about machines or weapons, it was about memory. There was one final link, an entity older than even the Titans, buried not in steel, but in silence. Not a ship, but a person. One who hadn't been made, but tasked. Secret keeper. A soul who had survived the collapse, watched the downfall of the First Fleet, carried the last truth. They called him the Throne Keeper. No one knew his real name. He had been lost in time, buried in records, wiped clean, hidden in exile when the Dominion had risen. But Avalon remembered the whispers from her training, old lessons taught in silence. Warnings delivered only once. The Throne Keeper watches. If he ever speaks again, the galaxy burns or is reborn. She didn't know which one he would choose. The Horizon's Flame and Starweaver now traveled together, shadowed by three more recently awakened Titans: Cindertide, Iron Hollow, and Vigil's End. All 5 ships moved as one, without broadcasting location or purpose. They didn't need orders. They followed her voice like wolves trailing the wind. Dareth stood beside her in the observation hall of the Flame, staring at the gathered fleet. You've built the most dangerous force in the galaxy, he said quietly. Stopping, Avalon didn't look at him, because I haven't remembered everything yet. The Titans woke when I called, but they're incomplete. Their memories were locked after the betrayal. Someone had to survive. Someone who knew why. Turned to face him. I need the Throne Keeper. Dareth crossed his arms. And if he doesn't want to be found, then he'll run. Do we chase him? She nodded. We listen. The custodian found the clue first, buried in an old relay near the edge. Of black space's silent node that no AI could read was a whisper. Not a recording, not a transmission. A living code hiding in darkness for centuries, watching and waiting. A voice has returned. The chains are breaking. Well, see you at the fracture. Coordinates followed. It's not exact. Just a pattern: fractured gravity wells, unstable space, a shattered system. Dominion archives called it Sector Noctis. They had marked it sealed due to instability. But Avalon knew better. It was where the last truth had been buried. The fleet entered Noctis slowly. It was not space in the way most systems understood it. Gravity swirled unpredictably. Time fractured into slices, and broken moons orbited black suns that gave no heat. Only the Titans could navigate its older than warp engines, built to survive what even nature had forgotten. And then they found him. He stood alone, on a fragment of a world, surrounded by ruins made of metal, glass, and bone. A man tall, hooded, wrapped in faded robes. His eyes burned like molten silver, not with rage, but with burden. The Starweaver stopped in orbit, but the other ships held back. No one moved. Avalon descended alone. She stepped onto the cracked surface, the wind whispering ancient words she almost remembered. Her boots crunched glass. Around her, the wreckage of the old command towers of the First Fleet still stood like broken spears in the dust. He turned slowly. I told them not to wake you, he said. His voice was quiet, but it struck her like thunder. She stopped walking. You are the throne keeper, I was, he said, until you died. I didn't die, she whispered. They locked me away. He nodded slowly, because they feared what you'd become. I'm not their weapon. Said you're something worse. Your hope? They stood in silence, surrounded by the bones of a forgotten empire. Finally, she asked, do you still remember why we built the Titans? He looked past her, toward the sky, to protect what couldn't protect itself, to hold the line when empires fell, to remind the stars that order was not tyranny and power was not cruelty. He turned back to her, eyes hard. But they turned them into machines, into weapons of fear. And you were the last voice, the final override. Avalon swallowed. Then help me remember. Help me stop what's coming. The throne keeper hesitated and extended his hand. From beneath his robe, a black shard glowed with power, a memory crystal. One of only 3 ever made. A fragment of the original accord of the contract that created the War Voice program, Titans, and the First Fleet itself. If I give this to you, he said, you'll know everything. But once you do, there's no turning back. She reached forward, took it, and in that moment her mind burned with 1,000 lives. The first battles, the creation of the command voice, the betrayal by the Dominion, the vote that locked her in stasis, the final message sent by the Titan, council before they fell. Avalon gasped and fell to her knees. The throne keeper knelt beside her. You see it now, he said, don't you? She nodded, breath shallow. The Titans weren't meant to destroy. The Dominion. They were meant to replace it. He stared at her. Are you ready to take the throne? She looked up. I'm not ready, but I will be. And above them, the sky lit with signals, Titans across the stars, aligning into formation. The war. The voice had remembered. The throne keeper had returned. Now the galaxy would learn. What came next when the throne no longer sat empty? The sky above Sector Noctis shimmered with ancient light beacons of power blinking across black space as Titan-class vessels moved into perfect formation, not in chaos, not in reaction, but with precision, unity, purpose. They had once fought, alone, scattered, half awake, but now they gathered like wolves answering a call. They had waited lifetimes to hear, because the throne keeper had returned. And with him stood the only voice ever allowed to command the fleet without question. Avalon, the girl once chained in silence. The prisoner of Cell Zero, the secret they buried. Now she stood at the center of a storm, aboard the Horizons. Flame, the Resistance crew watched in breathless awe. Dozens of Titans each, a world-sized ship capable of shaking. Entire fleets moved in synchronized orbits, Cindertide, Iron Hollow, Vigil's End, Starweaver, and more. Ships whose names hadn't been spoken in 10,000 years. Ships once thought destroyed in the first collapse. Captain Dareth stood beside the custodian, silent as Avalon reappeared on the command deck. She was changed. Her eyes no longer held confusion, only fire. Her voice, once soft, now cut through the room like a blade. I remember it all, she said. Dareth nodded once. Then you know what you have to do. She stepped forward to the core interface. We end the Dominion's lie. Not with revenge, not with terror, but with truth, and if they resist that truth, then they will burn. The custodian's voice was reverent. The throne has waited. Do you claim it? She didn't pause. I do, the interface responded. Throne protocol initiated. All Titans sync to command voice Avalon. Confirmation required. From across the fleet, dozens of Titan A's responded. Voices of stone, of steel, of time itself. Confirmed. Confirmed. We hear you, Commander. War voice verified. And in the center of it all, the throne protocol activated. Avalon's voice went out not to the Resistance, not to the Dominion, but to the galaxy. Through shattered satellites, buried relays, and deep space comes once thought dead. Her signal traveled farther than any living message had before. I am Avalon, the voice you silenced. I speak now not as a prisoner, but as the voice of the last throne. The Titans are no longer sleeping. The fleet is united, and your war is over. She didn't say Dominion by name. She didn't need to. Across 1,000 systems, Dominion governors, warlords, and AI tacticians froze as the message reached them. Defense codes began failing. Black sites went dark. Entire Dominion fleet segments experienced power surges they could not contain. And then came the final line, stand down or be dismantled. The Dominion responded exactly as Avalon knew they would. They panicked. 3. Supreme Overseers gathered in secret and initiated Protocol Excision, a command order to deploy every Dreadnought, Scorcher ship, and Black Ops AI unit to obliterate. The returning Titans, their mistake wasn't in the attack. It was believing it would work. The war began in Sector Azur-3.5. Dominion Dreadnoughts arrived, backed by swarm drones and gravity shear torpedoes. The fleet's most elite ships, waiting for them was a single Titan, Gravlight. When the Dominion opened fire, Gravlight didn't dodge. It absorbed the shots, then responded with a voice. Weapon Avalon had only recently remembered how to unlock. The Void Choir, a sound without pitch. A frequency designed to bypass hull flesh. An AI logic. The Dominion fleet shattered within 40 seconds. Ships collapsed. Drones failed. Pilots screamed and died before they could eject. And the galaxy watched it live. Other battles followed. In Sector Blackveil, Seraph's anchor disabled a Dominion Star Foundry by turning its own shield system into a gravitational implosion trap in Sector Halo's crown. Syndotide spoke a single word and turned a fleet of pursuers into debris. Dust, using a resonance field older than physics textbooks. But it wasn't the destruction that frightened the galaxy, it was the discipline. The Titans didn't kill needlessly. They struck only when attacked, then offered surrender. And when local Dominion forces surrendered, the Titans stopped firing. They weren't mindless weapons. They were soldiers answering a higher code. They were justice, not chaos. Avalon stood once more before her fleet. Her eyes were hard now. There's one left, she said. The core. The Dominion's heart. The capital world. Dareth stepped forward. You're going to attack their throne? No, she said. I'm going to sit in it. The custodian blinked. You intend to take the Dominion capital? She nodded. I won't burn it. I will replace it. Throne of silence ends. The throne of voice begins. And so, the Titans moved. Across the stars, the fleet formed one final Shapan arrow, aimed at the heart of tyranny. The battle for the Dominion core world lasted 6 minutes. They never stood a chance. Their final AI fell to the War Voice's command. Their dreadwolves melted beneath anti-gravity lances. The Defense Council surrendered without firing their last cannon. Avalon walked into the Dominions Hall of Rule as 1,000 ships hovered above. She didn't wear armor. She wore her old prisoner's cloak. And as she stepped up to the central throne, the one carved from stolen maker stone, she sat, quietly, then spoke 2 words into the command node. Reset history. The Dominion's systems collapsed. The war was over. Later, when the resistance finally arrived, they found her sitting alone, calm, watching stars out of a broken window. Dareth stood beside her. Is it really done? No, she whispered. But it's finally ours. Above them, the Titans hovered silently, watching, waiting, not for orders, but for peace. The war was over, the throne was reclaimed, and the galaxy would never forget her name again.